Hi friends, welcome back to my lockdown diaries. This is Shashwat here. These diaries are my attempt to document my thoughts and experiences as we go through these lockdown days. What's the big news today? It's basically raining money. So if you would have heard the finance minister right now, and she has been speaking for the past couple of days, ever since Prime Minister Modi came and made the major announcement about the 20 lakh crore relief package. So every day you are getting new unraveling is happening of that package. Some new some 1,000 crores here, some 1,000 crores there, some 1,000 crores to agriculture, to fisheries, to housing sector, to almost everyone. It's like this is a bonanza time for Indians especially. It's cash, it's subsidy, it's loan, you name it. But the big question that everyone is asking, and this is like it's one of our biggest infusion of cash into the economy. It's almost 10% of our GDP, right? But what everyone is pointing out is this really enough? So there was this funny message that was floating on the WhatsApp some time back, and it was after this whole announcement was made. Someone had the funny sense of dividing the 20 lakh crore by 1.3 billion Indians, and the figure came to around 15,000. So the spent per head per capita in India of this relief package is around 15,000. Now if you consider this 15,000, while it might seem very big, but if you really divide it for the kind of work that is necessary in terms of infrastructure, in terms of medical, in terms of everything, it falls woefully short. Now the question that we need to the big question is, what is enough? Rather than talking what is enough, I would like to dwell on another aspect, and that is, will anything ever be enough in India? Now, given the population in India, given the fact that we are the second most populous country in the world, would anything really be enough? And the second thing that I want to just touch upon is all these problems that we face today in terms of economic scenario, in terms of implementation of this lockdown, in terms of controlling the spread of this epidemic. Is population a factor there or not? Now, just to begin with, just to give a picture of how things stand, India is 2.4% of the surface area, global surface area of the world. It supports 16% of the population. It has 4% of the water resources. So if you look, our population size is woefully too big for the resources that we have. So we are always falling short of the resources that we have. Secondly, if you compare India would be overtaking China by 2025. Earlier it used to be 2024, 2040. Now it's come down to 2025. So we will be the most populous nation in the world. Now some people like to call it the demographic dividend. I like to, it's not as simple as that. A size of this population, to be able to support them in terms of resources, in terms of jobs, in terms of education, in terms of healthcare, in terms of all these housing, in terms of everything, is a very difficult task. I remember there was this very famous economist who had spoken about that in India, the way the population is growing, it is outpacing the growth by a couple of percentage points. Even if India grows at 10% per annum of a GDP, right, then only we will be able to match up to the population requirement that we have. You have some of the largest number of poor in India. Outside of Africa, India has the largest number of poor. Almost 30% of our population is below the poverty line, as we call it, right? They are not, of course we have done pretty well in one of the SDG goals of extreme poverty. We have been able to reduce that thing, so people are not starving like they used to do a couple of decades back. But yet people are there's a vast discrepancy between the haves and the have-nots, and that was very much visible when you have this migrant crisis going on in India, right? All these people who are moving from the cities to the rural centers, these are the poor people who have been coming to our cities for jobs. because they are unable to find any employment, or they are unable to source their livelihood in their places. So this has been the scenario in India. And population is a really big important aspect. I remember there was this report where close to 11,000 global scientists had come up with this thing, and they had termed as population growth to be one of the biggest problems that the world is going to face. If you see, there's this whole there's a day that is celebrated where we talk about how the resources of the earth have been diminished for this thing in a year, calendar year. So they have said, the possibility of earth to replenish its resources. So they put it on a timeline, and it has been coming down every year. It was something like August last year, I remember. So you have all these things happening, and it's not something very recent, from the times of the 18th century, where Thomas Malthus had propagated the whole fact about how population will be a big problem and lead to famines and starvation. Then you had someone, limits of growth, and you have all these theories that have been going around. So it's an undeniable factor that we will be facing this problem, and our population size is not something that we can take for granted. When the first census was done in independent India, that was 1951, our population was around 350 million mark, 360 million mark, and now it's close to 1.37 billion. So that's almost like a 3.5-4 times kind of a jump in all these 60 odd years. So given that fact, the real issue is what needs to be done. Sadly, the action on this front has been very lacking from the political front. I remember I was speaking to one Bill Ryson, who is a founder of the Population Media Center. It's an international body that talks about population and all. So I remember I had one meeting with him, and he was speaking about that one of the biggest disservice that was done to population in India was the sterilization program carried out by the Indira Gandhi government during the emergency. At that time, during 76 to 77, and you have to remember the 70s was a decade when all these things were coming out, the limits of growth and all this talk about how all this the resources will be wiped out, and you had the oil crisis and everything. So in 76, 77, the Indira Gandhi government had under the aegis of Sanjay Gandhi, they had carried out these mass sterilizations. Close to 8 million people were sterilized. A majority, almost 6 million of them, were vasectomies. The government fell after that. When the elections happened, Congress was routed and everything. But beyond the political repercussion, the biggest casualty was population became a taboo topic in India. No political leader worth his weight was ever able to raise the topic of population. In fact, on the contrary, you have leaders talking about how we need to, increase the number of families that we have, how it also became a topic that was dividing us. There was a xenophobic thing going around with that. So you had all this talk about how the southern India and the northern India divide, how the north is populating, or there would be people who would be blaming the Muslims and how the Hindus should also raise. So in all this melting pot of conspiracies and all these theories, the whole real issue got sidelined completely. And what happened, the casualty was no one spoke about this thing. Everyone would highlight population growth as something that was good for the economy, good for the country, good. Oh, we'll have so many young people in our thing. Oh, we'll have so many working hands. Oh, that would be such a good support to our GDP. And but no one spoke about that these people, if they are not educated well, if they are not given jobs well, it would create a great crisis, right? And today, India has in this coronavirus thing, India has the second highest number of employment rate in the world. So if you compare these scenarios, it is because we have such vast numbers that whatever happens, it always happens on a big scale. So that has been one of the crying factors. But it's not as if, and I'd like to clarify this as well, it's not as if change is not happening. While while there are a lot of lot of scientists and lot of experts will highlight the fact that the way the Indian population has grown and is growing, the fact remains that it has actually slowed down over the years. And so if the best example, the best indicator of that slowdown is what is something called as a net fertility rate. So what happens, according to WHO, the net fertility rate for a given population to just be stable is around 2.1. So if every woman has 2.1 kids, the population will remain more or less stable. Historically, India had when India's independence was there, India was around at 3. It has fallen over the years, and in 2019, if I'm not wrong, I was reading somewhere, it was around 2.2. That's very close to 2.1. Now, the factors that has affected this fall, and this not fall, I would say, the slowdown of the growth. That's important. India's population is growing, but there has been a slowdown in the growth. The factors that have helped this thing are 3 important factors. One is child marriages have been abolished, which has been stringently done with the by the governments all across the board. What has helped? That has helped in what the fertility years of the couples has reduced, and they are having lesser children because of that. The second big factor has been literacy. So literacy is one of the biggest factor. Education, especially of women, is one that really impacts this population growth in a way that is phenomenal. Across all the advanced countries we have seen, which wherever the literacy rate among the women is higher, that's where the population growth is always curtailed. And we can see this example even in India. So if you take the states of, say, Kerala and Bihar, if I'm not wrong, Kerala has a illiteracy rate of women around 75 to 80%. Their net fertility rate is around 1.7. While if you compare Bihar there the literacy rate is hovering around 30-40, and their net fertility rate is around 3.4 to 3.7, somewhere around that. So you see, wherever there is education, it automatically falls down. And third, the biggest thing has been urbanization and economic progress. So what happens is a lot of people are moving into towns and cities. People who live in the cities are conscious about all these factors. So there's a social pressure also on having kids. See, in my generation, when I was born, we were 3 siblings, and having 3 or 4 kids was pretty common when I was growing up. Now it's completely, I don't know a friend of mine who has 3 kids right now. 2 kids is like that's the maximum that you can do, and that is not because there's a physical limit to having those kids. It's the economic limit. Today, rearing up a child is a very costly affair. To be able to give them education, to be able to take care of them, to be able to create a nice future for them is a very important aspect that most parents are concerned about, and that happens mostly in the urban center. So as India urbanizes, as as the population moves from the the rural to urban centers, you'll have these kind of phenomena. More urbanites are more attuned to using contraceptives. You have especially the female side, you have all these IODs and all that stuff happening. So on the urban side you have this thing. So we now have a positive scenario. The growth in India is very much controlling. We are being able to control that growth, and hopefully in the years to come there have been figures that also say that that after a point of time when our fertility rate drops below 2.1 and around 2, we will actually have a better scenario in terms of all across the world. And let's also speak about the demographic dividend that everyone is talking about. The fact of the matter is, India has the youngest population in the world, right? The number of youth in India are far greater in number than anywhere else. Compare it with China, which forcefully enforced the one-child policy from 79 to 2015. So while they have been able to arrest that growth, the problem is now the aging population of China they are becoming very concerned about the fact that they will have no one to work to take care of this population. There is no input into the GDP as time goes by. So India would have that advantage. Now lot of people have talked about, and we are seeing this again and again, especially with this government also. There have been numerous independent bills that have been floated, that we should enforce two children kind of a thing, where we should people should not be given thing, and there should be some kind of stringent measures done, and done. Even the Prime Minister had spoken last time on the Independence Day. He had given a small bit. He had spoken about how a small majority of Indians are doing their patriotic duty in trying to control the population. So instead of using the stick, I would always say use the carrot. We need to use the carrot approach to things. We need to incentivize. We need to popularize the fact of having smaller number of families. I'll give you a small example. So years back, so there's a very famous serial that used to come on Disney India, Neil and Nikki, the Nikki show, something. It was about a family. They have a couple of children, 3 or 4 children, and so I remember Best of Luck Nikki. Yeah, so that was the Best of Luck Nikki was the show. I remember that. So what had happened was it was a rip-off of a US sitcom. So they were going through one season and all. So I remember at the last count they had 4 children out there. In the next season that they were launching, which was copied again from the US, the number of children would increase to 5. And I had written to Disney India's representatives. I had told them that this serial is very popular not only with kids but also with families. And when you show such huge families, and they're having very nice time, there's no economic troubles by the father. Everyone is doing, education is all very taken. It's a very fun and frolicking kind of an atmosphere. I written to them specifically that you should have a disclaimer at the start which says that we don't promote these kind of thing. It's only for the sake of fiction and all. So I'd given them a whole thing, and I'd said that this is not the best way to do it. So that is what we need to do. We need to instill into people this whole fact that having smaller families is good, and that is very possible right now. The child mortality rates have really fallen. Our medical system has become very good. Our life expectancy has been going up over the years. So given all these factors, we need to really work on the positive side of all these things. As far as finally, I just wanted to touch on one small aspect. So the people who talk good about the population, they talk about how in this epidemic the herd immunity and all these factors would really work to India's advantage. And since we have so many number of young people, we have a natural advantage over the rest of the world, and how this virus will be able to deal it much better than the rest of the world. And I did a small analysis today. So what I did, India's cases are around 81,000, 81, 83,000, 82,000. So I was just comparing with the scenario that was with US for the sake of comparison. So US right now has the maximum number of cases. On March 26th, that was 50 days ago, US had 81. It had overtaken China that day. It had 81,000 cases, more or less the same number of corona virus cases that India has. But US had close to 1200 deaths. And how many does India have? India has 2600. That's more than twice the numbers. So for all those people who are talking about their benefits, no, there's not really a benefit. Population does not solve your problem. Population does not come handy. In fact, we are having more than twice the number of deaths at the same number of cases. So I just wanted to end this, on a holistic basis. We need to deal with this issue. We need to, I completely, while the growth has slowed down, but we still need to use our minds, use our science, use our whatever means at our disposal to ensure that our population growth does not explode the manner at which it has been happening over the years. We need to give a positive messaging from our celebrities who have now found a new way of having more kids, to surrogacy, to everyone. There's a need to pass on this message that having babies is not only a personal decision, but it also has social and national consequences. And this is something that we need to bear in mind. In India, every minute close to 34 babies are born. if my talk, which is usually about by the time you have gone through this talk itself, more than 500 to 600 babies will be born. So that's the numbers that we are adding up. I just hope that we are aware of that and we pay cognizance to that issue as well. So on that note, and this happens to be a Friday, so I'll catch you on Monday again. Till then, stay safe, stay inside, and don't forget to wash your hands. Bye bye.